Can you believe that the first creature to successfully go into space was a dog? Yep, on November 1957, the Soviet Union launched a little stray named Laika into orbit. A dog went to space before humans did. America's reaction: pure panic. If the Soviets could send the dog up today, they could send the nuclear warhead up tomorrow. Senator Lyndon Johnson immediately pressured the US government to pump more money into space research. Meanwhile, Wernher von Braun, a super genius who once built rockets for the Nazis, began offering the US some friendly advice. Von Braun's idea was simple. America was scared of Soviet mega-rockets, right? Well, if the US would just fund his team properly, he could build a satellite capable of intercepting nuclear missiles from outer space. But President Eisenhower didn't want anything to do with a guy who had former Nazi rocket scientists stamped on his arm. He'd rather fund other scientists instead. Result: the Vanguard rocket. Those other guys built managed to jump a few feet and then exploded right on launch day. Eisenhower was furious. He spent $110 million and all he got was boom. So in the end, he swallowed his pride and called von Braun back. With full government support, von Braun didn't waste time. In just 4 months, he successfully launched America's first artificial satellite. Hitler had called him a genius, and now America did too. People started calling him Rocket Man, and despite his background, the US basically worshipped him. The government still unhappy about his past reluctantly threw big money at him anyway and built NASA around his ideas. Von Braun, fully funded and energized, became even more ambitious. He said, if the Soviets can send a dog into space, that's nothing. Give me 2 years and I'll build America a space station people can live in. Of course the Soviets heard that. Sergei Korolev, the brains behind the Soviet space program, fired right back. If you're so confident, let's see who sends a human into space first. Both were top-tier geniuses, but their personalities were polar opposites. Von Braun grew up under the spotlight, flashy, extroverted, dramatic. Before he even finished building a manned rocket, he held a whole press conference announcing several young men as future astronauts, as if they were going to space tomorrow. Korolev, much more low-key. He'd been tinkering with rockets in the Soviet Union since he was 23, until the Great Purge landed him in a gulag for 6 years. 6 years in a prison camp made him distrustful and temperamental. When he was finally released to help the USSR build rockets, Khrushchev was worried Soviet engineers weren't competent enough, so he hired a batch of German scientists. Korolev took one look and said, "Trash," and sent them all back to Germany. He wanted the world to see that even after 6 years in a cell, he was still an absolute rocket wizard. While von Braun used America's endless funding to test launch rockets over and over, Korolev directly put a young man named Yuri Gagarin inside a rocket and prepared a real human launch. Gagarin didn't hesitate. He strapped in, blasted off, circled Earth once, and came back alive. He didn't do much in space, but returning alive was all it took to make him the world's biggest celebrity. Gagarin, now first human in space, went on a world tour. America was fuming. They asked von Braun, "So when is our guy going to orbit Earth?" Von Braun, being von Braun, scoffed, "Orbiting Earth, that's kid stuff. I'm building the biggest rocket of all time. We're going to the moon." Kennedy was like, "How about you first get someone into orbit before talking about the moon?" Von Braun could feel the disbelief coming from the White House. Finally, he'd prove himself. Less than a month after Gagarin's flight, von Braun declared the US would send someone into space as well, and this time, with a live broadcast. Kennedy panicked. What if it explodes on live TV? Can we do a secret test first? But von Braun wanted to compete head-on with Korolev. The American manned rocket did launch, but it wasn't nearly as impressive as Gagarin's flight. Gagarin orbited Earth. The US flight? It just went up, reached space, and came straight back down. Kennedy didn't care. He declared America had caught up and announced a new goal: land on the moon within 10 years. The USSR couldn't just sit and watch. To stay ahead, Soviet astronauts practiced endless orbits around Earth before America even completed a full orbit mission. cosmonaut German Titov had already circled Earth 17 times, covering 700,000 kilometers in 25 hours. America was shocked. Is this guy made of steel? In reality, Titov had already vomited his soul out in space. But for the sake of national glory, he stepped out of the capsule claiming he felt great and could do 2 more laps. Kennedy kept sending astronauts to practice Earth orbits for the future moon mission. But the American public didn't care. Every mission cost taxpayer money about $10 per person. People weren't thrilled to pay for someone else's space vacation. Especially the black community. Not only was NASA spending all that money, but all 7 astronauts so far were white. They demanded a black astronaut be included, or they'd protest. Kennedy, needing political peace, pushed the black trainee into NASA's program. But he was shunned and isolated. And a few months later, NASA kicked him out for poor teamwork. The guy was furious. If you didn't want me to go to space, you could have just told me. Meanwhile, von Braun proudly showed Kennedy his new lunar rocket booster. Kennedy was thrilled and told the public everything was under control, and the US would surpass the Soviets soon. But there was a big problem. Even though von Braun had all the equipment needed to reach the moon, he had no idea how to get everything into orbit and dock it all together perfectly. There were no examples to learn from, so he couldn't guarantee a 100% safe docking. Korolev had similar lunar challenges, but for political reasons. Khrushchev refused to fund the Soviet moon mission. No funding equals no progress. But half a year later, Khrushchev was removed and Brezhnev took over. Unlike Khrushchev, Brezhnev didn't penny pinch, need money. Take it. With funding restored, Korolev moved fast. Single-person flights, multi-person flights, even the first-ever spacewalk. Von Braun marked it all. You can walk your astronaut's legs off in space, still doesn't get you to the moon. Only my big rocket can do that. Then karma hit. The US government wanted to pause funding for von Braun, not because they lacked money, but because they were tired of being a sucker funding a project that had spent $25 billion with no results. Von Braun panicked. To save his program, he attempted an orbital docking test, which immediately went wrong. The spacecraft's communication failed, causing it to spin like crazy 1 full rotation per second. The astronauts almost passed out. Luckily, one of them, Neil Armstrong, stayed calm. He had learned to fly a plane before he learned to drive a car. His superpower, handling insane spinning. Armstrong followed the controls, stabilized the spacecraft, and brought it home safely. He became a legend overnight. The docking test failed, but it gave NASA valuable data. Von Braun improved the equipment, the moon program resumed, and Armstrong, thanks to his performance, was placed at the top of the list for the first-ever moon landing. And that's how the future first man on the moon secured his spot in history.